Greetings and welcome. This is the BankNotes Herbalist Asar of the ThaBadbreyHerbal.co.uk. And today I'm going to speak to you about how ancient astrological symbolism and correspondences are intrinsically embedded into the very fabric of society as a whole. Okay? This is the BankNotes Herbalist Asar, ancient astrologer. So, what I'm going to focus on today is the aesthetic appearance and look of the design of the money, well, the paper money, the notes that are used in UK currency, all right? So, let's start off with the £5 note, all right? This is part 2 of money astrology. I already covered the coins in a previous video. So, let's look at this £5 note. This is the new £5 note. And as you can see, based upon this, when you look at the symbolism of the color that is used in the £5 note itself, you can see it has a white color, a white shade on this side. And then it's got this greenish, bluish color. And then it's got this man here is a bluish, greenish color. And all around here is bluish, greenish. And it corresponds with green / white. All right. Now, to me, looking at it from a standpoint of ancient astrology, this blatantly to me corresponds to the moon, all right? Based upon its color, corresponds to the moon because it has white over here. It has this bluish greenish color which corresponds with the ocean, all right? You see? And the moon controls the ocean. She controls the tides, all right? And when you look at the ocean itself, it has a bluish greenish color, not quite blue, not quite green, slightly transparent, which is the same as the color here on this £5 note. Yeah. And then the color white corresponds to the moon as well. And then the word moon being etymologically linked to the word money, mon, and month, currency, current, all of that corresponds to this £5 note. This over here, this kind of, I think this is Big Ben over here, this phallic symbol, or should I say, this representation of masculine energy being in this position right next to this circle over here, which represents feminine energy, which corresponds with the law of polarity. And you have the law of polarity, which is masculine energy, well, not even polarity, it's the law of gender, masculine and feminine energy coming together. And then they are opposite polarities of each other. So it also corresponds with the law of polarity as well. And when you have those two coming together, you create something, all right? You create a child. Feminine and masculine energy coming together creates a child. And as you can see, this is the £5 note. The 5 corresponds to the 5th house of the zodiac. The 5th house of the zodiac corresponds to children as well as creativity. Hence, why you have this phallic symbol, masculine symbol, right next to this feminine symbol representing gender as well as polarity and creativity and abundance as a result of creativity, all right? Now, the color of this symbol here is like a solar color. It's gold, which corresponds alchemically to the sun, all right? Now, the sun is masculine energy again, all right? Which is why Big Ben, which is a phallic symbol corresponding to masculine energy, is colored gold because gold corresponds to the sun, which is masculine energy, all right? And the sun corresponds to, in sacred geometric terms, corresponds to straight lines, masculine energy, which is why you have this shape here, which is like a straight line at a point. All right. Now, when we go back down over here to this side, on this particular note, on the other side, as you can see, this is a woman here, and she corresponds to feminine energy. And then next to her, we have the masculine energy in the form of a golden Big Ben. And then on the other side of the note, we have a man, which is over here. And then on this side, we still have Big Ben, but Big Ben is silver. Alchemically speaking, silver corresponds to the moon. All right. So they're using the law of gender and the law of polarity, which is really magic, which is being used right in front of your face on the currency. Now, the color gold again over here corresponds with the sun and the sun's light. And as we know, the moon, as it is taught in schools and in the educational system, the moon reflects the sun's light. Hence why we have this greenish bluish color, which corresponds to the oceans that are controlled by the moon. And then this white color over here, which is correspondent to the moon. And then you have this gold over here, which corresponds to the sun's light shining into the moon. And see this curve over here? That represents feminine energy. Sacred geometry, a curve is feminine and a straight line is masculine. So this curve over here represents the curve of the feminine energy of the moon. And because you can see all of this gold shining through, that represents the sun's light actually shining through. Yeah. And as I said, that bluish greenish color represents the moon's power and control over the oceans, the green seas. Yeah, as you can see, this is the same, almost the same color as a £5 note. Why else would they choose to have a color which looks almost exactly like the ocean and put that on a £5 note? All right, I think it's a bit obvious. Now let's go to the £10 note. The £10 note, as you can see, we have on the £10 note, it is an orangish copperish color mostly. That's what catches your eye when you look at the £10 note, a orangish copperish color. Now the copper color represents, alchemically, copper could be seen to be corresponding with the planet Venus, and Venus corresponds with fertility, lush ground. So to me, this copper color represents the ground of the earth, as well as the fertile ground of the earth as well. All right. See this copper color again. This will correspond. This 1p and 2p correspond with the copper color of the earth. All right. The earth's soil. Yeah. And the mineral-rich nature of the earth's soil. See that over here? So this £10 note represents the earth and the earth's soil, all right? And the fact that it has the numbers 1 and 0, that 1 can be seen to correspond with the fact that the first planet in the solar system, from our perspective, is the earth. We are number 1. If you're speaking to somebody and having a conversation with them, the most important part of that conversation is the other person. People like when you speak about them and you put them first and they are number 1. If you're in a relationship and you put the other person as number 1, then the relationship goes far. If you put yourself as number 1, then they think you're inconsiderate. People are inherently more interested in themselves and number 1, and they see the world from their perspective. So this number 1 over here corresponds to the earth, and this copper orange color represents the earth's soil. All right. And this woman over here represents the feminine energy that is needed in order to create fertility in the earth's soil, which corresponds with Venus. All right. And Venus alchemically links up and it corresponds with copper again, which is why this is this color. All right. Now let's go to the £20 note. The £20 note, as we can see, is a purple color. Now, speaking in terms of astrology, the color purple corresponds with the planet Jupiter. If I'm looking at a horary chart and I'm trying to find a lost object, the planet Jupiter, if the planet Jupiter is implicated to indicate the whereabouts and or the appearance of the lost object, then I can deduce that the lost object may be either the color purple or it may be found next to something that is colored purple. All right. So this corresponds with Jupiter. Now, Jupiter corresponds with gifts and abundance, and also corresponds with people bring you presents and banquets and celebrations. All that kind of thing corresponds with Jupiter, which is why if you zoom into this, you can see these musical notes here corresponds to Jupiter, the gift of music, which has been given to the world for human beings to express. All right. Then you have the color purple, which corresponds to Jupiter. Now, it just so happens that £20 notes happen to be abundant. If you go to a cash point or a cash machine, or you go to the bank and you ask to withdraw a certain amount of money, it's very easy for them to just take out a couple of £20 notes and bunch them together and give them to you. They're very abundant. And that's because it corresponds with Jupiter, the planet of abundance. All right. Corresponds with Jupiter. As you can see, he bestows gifts upon you. The £20 note. All right. Now, the next one we go to is the £50 note. Now, as you can see, this is color red. This blatantly to me corresponds with Mars. All right. Corresponds with Mars. The color red corresponds with blood. People usually will stop at nothing to get their hands on the highest amount of money possible in the shortest space of time. All right. People would kill to get a high amount of money. They will shed blood to get a high amount of money, which is why the £50 note is red, because it corresponds with Mars. Most people will stop at nothing, just like the ram, which corresponds with Aries, which is ruled by Mars. Yeah, they'll stop at nothing to pursue monetary wealth, which is why the £50 note is actually red. All right. It's a bit obvious to me when I look at this. Yeah. Now, after all of that, and I'm going through this very briefly, there's a lot more I could cover. Going through all of that, all of these notes, people usually carry all of these notes, yeah, in a purse or a wallet, yeah. And a wallet is usually colored black. Now, if you've been following my videos, yeah, on this series of the astrology hidden within, you would know that the color black corresponds with the planet Saturn. All right. It corresponds with the planet Saturn, astrologically speaking. All right. Now, if you look at the myth of Saturn or Cronus, Father Time, what does Father Time do? What does Cronus do? What does Saturn do? He eats his children. Yeah. They all came out of him and he eats them. When you look at it from a philosophical standpoint, we all came from Saturn. All the planets come from Saturn. We go from Saturn all the way down through the Chaldean order and we incarnate onto the earth. And when we go back through those heavenly spheres and we end up back at Saturn. Saturn is Father Time. Saturn comes up at the end of your life when you are dying, all right? Represents death and the end of life, yeah? So, he eats his children, all right? And in this case, his children, Saturn is the wallet, the color black, and his children is the money. And this is why we put all of our money into a black wallet, because the black wallet, the black purse, corresponds with Cronus, all right, who eats his children. And all of these notes correspond to the planets. And all of these planets in the myth are the offspring of Saturn. And Saturn eats his children. That's why you put the money in the wallet. All right. And what do people say? They say time is money. And who is Saturn? Saturn is Father Time, astrologically speaking. All right. So there you go. It all comes down to Saturn again. This is the BankNotes Herbalist Asar. of the BankNotes.co.uk, ancient astrologer, and I will be back. Dendera. Stay tuned.